Veridian was a city built on stone. Towering monuments lined every boulevard, their marble faces polished to perfection, commemorating emperors, generals, and forgotten wars. To most citizens, the statues were symbols of pride, but to Elias Thorne, they were chains. His father had been a historian who dared to question the Empire's version of history, and now his name was erased from every record. Elias grew up in whispers and shadows, carrying a legacy of rebellion he barely understood. Elias ran a modest restoration shop. By day, he cleaned statues, repaired cracked marble, and earned the approval of the very empire that had destroyed his family. But each statue polished reminded him of the injustice that loomed over Veridian. One morning, while inspecting the grand statue of Emperor Cassian IV in the Grand Plaza, Elias noticed a subtle crack at its base. A metaphor, he thought, a symbol waiting to be exploited. That night, under the veil of darkness, he returned to the monument with his tools. But preservation was no longer enough. His hands traced the smooth marble, imagining the people crushed by the empire, his father, the teachers jailed for spreading forbidden knowledge, the artisans forced to carve propaganda. Elias carved a small message into the stone. Remember the forgotten. By dawn, the city was abuzz. No one knew who dared deface imperial property, but the message sparked curiosity and quiet admiration. Citizens whispered, sharing the inscription in taverns, workshops, and marketplaces. For the first time in decades, the statues did not only reflect the empire, they spoke. Elias disappeared into the city's narrow streets, blending into the morning crowd, but the act was not just symbolic. It was a challenge. The empire would respond. And Elias was ready. He sought allies in the shadows, band historians, secretive artisans, and scholars who knew the city's hidden tunnels. These labyrinthine passages beneath Veridian would become his headquarters, a place to plan, craft messages, and teach the citizens to see the monuments not as idols, but as instruments of rebellion. Within a week, Veridian streets shifted in atmosphere. The Empire intensified its patrols, boots echoing against cobblestones, banners fluttering as if to intimidate every citizen into obedience. Yet, a quiet defiance had begun to grow. The people looked at monuments with new eyes, searching for hidden messages, reading between the lines of imperial propaganda. Elias organized a network, operating from the underground chambers beneath the Hall of Records. They struck at the monuments with precision, etching the names of forgotten villagers, adding secret inscriptions commemorating those who resisted, and leaving subtle symbols only the attentive would notice. Each monument became a coded map of memory and rebellion. The Empire responded swiftly. Commander Rallos, infamous for extracting confessions through fear and torture, was dispatched to crush the insurgent. He scoured the city relentlessly, interrogating citizens, bribing informants, and infiltrating workshops. Fear gripped the city. Even Elias's allies trembled, wondering if the rebellion was doomed. Then betrayal struck. One young historian, Callan, fearing the Empire's wrath, revealed Elias's plans, exposing their operations. An imperial warning appeared on the next monument Elias intended to mark. Traitors are watched. Defiance is death. Elias felt the sting of betrayal, but he refused to surrender. He turned the city's fear into strategy, planting false trails, setting traps, and using the city's labyrinthine architecture against the Empire. The citizens, inspired by his audacity, began contributing in small, subtle ways. Shopkeepers carved tiny symbols on benches, apprentices left markings in hidden corners, and scholars whispered Elias's messages in taverns. The monuments, once tools of control, became rallying points, and the Empire realized it was no longer dealing with a lone man, it faced a movement. Elias's defiance escalated further. He planned a bold act for the Festival of Ascension, when the city celebrated the Emperor's victories with pomp and ceremony. Using the tunnels, he and his allies infiltrated the Grand Plaza. That night, they inscribed every statue with names, messages, and symbols honoring the forgotten. The inscriptions glowed faintly in phosphorescent paint, visible when the festival torches were lit. When the city awoke, the monuments no longer reflected only imperial glory. They whispered truth, memory, and courage. Panic spread among the council, for their monuments, once untouchable, were now instruments of revolt. The empire could tolerate whispers no longer. Emperor Cassian IV ordered the arrest of all suspected rebels, and Ralos led a massive sweep through Veridian. Soldiers lined the streets, capturing artisans, interrogating citizens, and tearing through workshops. Yet Elias remained elusive, moving through the tunnels like a ghost, leaving false signs to mislead the pursuers. The final confrontation took place at the Plaza of Remembrance, a massive square dominated by the city's oldest statues. Elias emerged from the underground passages at dawn, flanked by a growing number of citizens who had joined his cause. Together, they faced the imperial forces, not with weapons, but with unity and courage. Every monument now bore messages of resistance, rallying the people. Ralos confronted Elias directly. Sword drawn, he demanded surrender. But Elias raised his hands toward the towering statues, shouting, "These stones belong to the people. Their stories, their courage, cannot be erased by fear." The citizens, emboldened by his words, pressed forward. The soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to attack those who had been quietly resisting for years. The empire's authority, rooted in fear, began to crumble. Ralos faltered, confronted by the undeniable power of a united populace. Elias seized the moment. He climbed the pedestal of the Grand Emperor's statue, carving his father's name alongside countless others who had been forgotten. The crowd cheered. The monuments, once instruments of oppression, now immortalized truth. By sunset, the city had changed forever. The empire could no longer rely on fear alone. Its monuments, intended to impose silence, had become a chorus of memory and defiance. Elias stood amidst the statues, exhausted but triumphant. Knowing he had done more than carve words into marble, he had carved freedom into the heart of Veridian. And in that moment, he understood. One man, armed with courage and cunning, could challenge an empire, and sometimes history itself would rise in revolt.